what's up with me. Almighty.
All right, let's get started. All right, guys, welcome back to Growth Minds. Today we've got a very special guest on here today, Robert Kiyosaki. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor.
You know, my dad, we grew up in Korea, and he, in the 1999, there was a recession happening in Korea to the point where he lost his job, this stable job that he had, made good enough money, but after all the things that he thought was secure, he lost it all.
Right.
And it just, as soon as you were talking about, you know, the difference between the poor dad and rich dad comparison, it was something I completely resonated with.
Right.
So I'm really excited to be talking to you here today.
Oh,
so you talk a lot in the book, of course, for people the few people that don't know. I mean, you've had 31 million copies sold now of The Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Well, 31 million registered copies, 41 million with pirated copies.
Oh, I mean, we're probably talking 100 million actually in terms of pirated. It's insane. Yeah.
Well, I was just in China. I was autographing books. It was like one book that was my book, and 5 were somebody else's. the pirates.
Oh my goodness.
Counterfeiters, you know.
Oh my God.
That's life. It's business.
That's how it is, I guess, now, right?
Yep.
So the main thing that you talk about, and the thing that really resonated me with, is this idea of the rich mindset versus the poor mindset.
Correct.
And I love that you start there versus starting out with specific strategies. You really focused on the psychology of really helping people unlearn what they've been taught through society, through you know, in my case, family members or culture. Talk to us a little bit about the difference about what a rich person's mindset is versus a poor mindset based on your experience.
Well, that's a massive subject, but the primary reason I became an entrepreneur, and I had high-paying jobs. You know, I could have sailed for Standard Oil. Back then, I was making about $48,000 a year, which is 69 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then I joined the U.S. Marine Corps to fly in Vietnam, so I could fly. So most of my friends went to fly for United Airlines, Eastern, and Northwest, and they all lost their jobs and their pensions.
Wow.
So I had the high-paying jobs. That wasn't the issue. I became an entrepreneur for the opportunity to learn. I didn't have to go to 9 to 5 at any one office, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I was free to go screw up all over the world, which I did. And so
Dominican Republic.
yeah. Well, I never got there, but I met some interesting women from there. No, I know Alex Rodriguez also. He's a massive entrepreneur.
Yes.
He is very committed to entrepreneurship training and all that. So that's the people I meet. And the young women I met from the Dominican Republic, she's an attorney, she's gorgeous, you know, all that. So that's why I'm speaking with high fond memories of the DR, never having been there.
Feels like you've been there, basically.
Yeah, in my dreams anyway.
Gotcha. So that was kind of the origin of how you started. But yeah, I mean, what do you think for people that perhaps a few people that have not read the book, what do you feel, if you can kind of highlight the major differences based on what you think have impacted people the most? What do you think those are?
Well, we started off on this as your family culture, your family values, you know, and the Asian culture, if you don't have at least a master's, and I don't have a master's.
Yeah.
I have a Bachelor of Science with Science for BS. But other than that, you know, I only became an entrepreneur because it was the greatest challenge I could take on as far as my personal education, personal development.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to make money, you know, and as I said, my first business was a nylon and Velcro surfer wallet business, and the mistake I made, I was successful. And we grew internationally so fast, I just couldn't finance my success. And so I started borrowing money, and which was good. I started to learn how to raise capital. I learned how to negotiating, you know, the reason I was in Korea fighting Taekwondo was I was out there negotiating anyway for production because we were manufacturing in Hawaii, where the cost of manufacturing was too high.
Sure.
So I had to fly to Korea and Taiwan to negotiate manufacturing. I tell you, man, you're not stupid until you're negotiating against Koreans and Taiwanese, man. Those guys had me coming and going up one side and down the other. But that's what I did it for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Is to learn. And to learn to finance, learn how to factor, you know, how to ship and then factor my inventory and all this stuff. And I learned so much as I was going broke, successfully going broke. And so when I explain to young people, that's what I did it for. That's how you get smarter. But in this academic culture, we're just talking about Jordan Peterson, how he rails up against academics. Well, in the academic culture, the person who makes the most mistakes is a stupid person. But in entrepreneur, the person that makes the most mistakes and learns from them is the rich person. So I always say to young entrepreneurs, money will never make you rich. It's your experience, how much you learn, the mistakes you make, the people you make. And although there's horrible experiences, they're all good experiences if you learn from them.
Sure.
And that's the attitudinal difference of an entrepreneur. Most guys are small business guys, they're not entrepreneurs. They open a pizza shop to make money and they get stuck in that pizza shop forever. Well, that's not me. And the subject of entrepreneur is a massive subject. So you got a drug dealer peddling drugs is also an entrepreneur, as is Jeff Bezos, running the biggest product-pushing company in the whole world. They're both entrepreneurs. But the gap between the drug dealer and Bezos, massive. So when I speak to young people, I say, what kind of entrepreneur do you want to be? And if you're just here to make money, you can do that, but it's not exciting.
Right. What do you think they should be focusing on other than just making money?
Well, for me, it was always taxes.
Okay. Isn't that technically more money, though? More money in the bank? Yeah,
but the problem is when I wrote a second book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, which is the E, employee, S, small business or self-employed or a small entrepreneur. B stands for big business, 500 employees or more. And I stands for professional insight investor. So if I'm buying stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, I'm not an insider. I'm an outsider. So my goal from my rich dad, not my poor dad, was to make it to the B quadrant, so I have 500 employees, but more importantly, to be an I quadrant investor. And those guys on Shark Tank, like Damon Johns and Cuban and those guys, they're B's and I's.
Yeah.
The average small guy is an E and an S. And there's a very big difference in taxes. So I wanted to learn the tax law. So my friend Donald Trump and I wrote two books together. I know he's hated, but we wrote 2 books together. And we make millions and pay no taxes legally. That was the objective.
And the idea is you have a corporation where you can deduct a lot of expenses.
Now you have to be very, very smart. You don't deduct expenses. You have to be both a B, big business, and an I, an insider. So I invest in the inside. I don't have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or ETFs. So the reason my education began when I left the Marine Corps, I was flying out of Kaneohe, Hawaii, and then so when I was watching an infomercial TV, I was still in the Marine Corps making back then about $700 a month as a Marine lieutenant. And I said, you too can make money in real estate. So my rich dad says, you better learn real estate because that's the game. So other than stocks, the real estate is the only game where you don't pay taxes.
Sure.
And the average person doesn't understand that because they're flippers. If you flip a house, you're paying taxes. So I don't flip either. So that was all part of the learning process it was like going down the maze, this tunnel and that tunnel and this tunnel.
Sure.
So today when I make, let's say, $1 million in my rich dad company, I go to the bank and I'll borrow 5 minutes. My $5 million, I got a 5-to-1 leverage. And with today's interest rates, it's fantastic.
Crazy. Yeah.
And because I'm leveraging up my real estate, I pay no taxes because of depreciation, amortization, and appreciation. So that's the stuff I was learning from my rich dad. Whereas my poor dad said, get your MBA. And I lasted, I think, 3 months in the MBA program. And then one day I woke up in the class and my notes were all blurred. I was still flying for the Marine Corps. I'm getting spit on by all the college students, you baby killer and all this stuff. And I wake up in the class, it was the accounting class, and my notes were all blurred because I drooled all over them. So I'm not learning a damn thing here. That was the last day of school for me.
Jesus.
Because I learned accounting working for Rich Dad as an apprentice, just like Trump.
Yeah. We're
apprentices. So I knew real accounting versus the fake accounting they teach in business school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the real accounting is how do you make sure you make a lot of money and pay no taxes.
That's it.
That's the game.
Yep. Yeah. And that was one of my valuable courses, certainly in university, but we were just talking off air. Grew up with very conservative parents.
Right.
Went to McGill, good university.
Great school, yeah.
Great school, and just didn't resonate. So I actually ended up dropping out. And I know your first book was talking about people dropping out and the education system, how flawed it was, right?
Oh, it's criminal.
Yes.
It's criminal that, they're taking so much money from your generation that, student loan debt is now bigger than the subprime mortgage debt. And to put young people in debt like that, they should take every college professor out there and shoot them at dawn. I'm a Marine. That's what we do to criminals. I'm only kidding.
Yeah,
but it's
course.
criminal what they're doing. You realize Harvard, with their endowments, could hand out free education for 150 years and not charge a thing. But instead, they take the best and the brightest and load them with debt. If their families can't pay for it, then they're screwed. On top of that, they learn nothing about money.
Yep.
There's a book, Tailspin, by, I forget his name is, but anyway, he's a Yale graduate plus Yale Law.
Yeah.
And he writes about how Yale is teaching young minds to create derivatives. They're not teaching them finance. And, derivatives are what Buffett calls financial weapons of mass destruction. And we're still producing today we're 1.4 quadrillion in derivatives. On top of that, the young people are deeply in debt.
Right.
And there's still no financial education in our schools.
And
It's
unlike
criminal.
corporations, when a student defaults or they go into bankruptcy, they still owe the schools money, right?
It's
When
the
they go
worst
into
type of debt you can possibly get into because there's no escape. See, if I get crucified for this, but I have one bankruptcy on my record, but it was a corporate bankruptcy. I have 27 companies. So 1 out of 27 going bankrupt, I thought was pretty good. But of course, a journalist, that's all they focus on. You have a bankruptcy. And I said, let me tell you something, numbbrains. There's a personal bankruptcy and there's business bankruptcies. No, but you have a bankruptcy, I'm going.
Yeah, that's all they care about, right?
But they don't know any difference.
Yeah.
And I agree with Buffett. He says, if you have stupid journalists, you have stupid people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's why I love Jordan Peterson, because he's attacking the academics. I love that guy.
Look at the headlines right now with Corona and everything that's happening. It's crazy.
God, no, but you know what I mean? Our academic systems are out of touch with the real world. That's my complaint.
Yeah.
And next to one of my best projects, a student loan provider is building this project that makes my place look small. I mean, they're building this massive, all built on collecting and servicing student loans. It's massive.
Yeah.
And they're SOBs to work with. I mean, they're my neighbors, but they think because of all this money coming in from students, they can bully me around. Well, I'm a real estate guy. We just fight back. They encroach on my easements and my boundaries. Well, we got more money than we can fight you all day long. I said, fight me. But they're student loan guys, which makes me hate them even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is in Phoenix. I won't mention the name because they're still my neighbors. The trouble with real estate, you can't choose your neighbors.
You can always move out, I guess. But I mean, this is the major problem with the education system. It's so outdated that, I mean, I've heard that the current American education system was actually modeled after the 18th century within Prussia.
Yes.
Right? And I think it had some also influence. Like, I mean, the whole idea is that the American system is currently nicknamed the factory model of education.
Correct.
In that we're just manufacturing
employees
and people, they're almost discouraging people to think in a creative way in a world that will thrive with creativity because everything's going to be automated away. It's just insane.
It is insane. The several things that I find, one more time, second book, Cash Flow Quadrant, ES. On the right side is B and I. And that's where guys like Mark Cuban and Damon Johns come from. They're professional investors. They acquire companies, they finance companies. They have what's called family offices, not home businesses or home offices. They're family offices. So I have a family office. So when I was a young man, my rich dad said to me, someday you want a family office. I said, what does that mean? I got an office. He goes, no. It's where you have a whole team of people moving your money for you because you got so much money coming in. Say too much money is a problem also because you got to keep moving it. So I have a family office, and that was part of the whole process of becoming rich was so I could learn to have a family office. And the average guy has a 401k. Why am I kicking his butt? I don't care if he went to Harvard. You know, I'll kick his butt up one side and down the other, making millions, not paying taxes, but keep moving my money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's education. That's what I learned.
Do you recommend, because there are schools, obviously, that are not as expensive in America. If you look at Europe, there are schools that are relatively cheap. Canada is still very expensive, but it's certainly not to that level of the US. So from like a cost perspective, if it is a lower cost, do you recommend, are there specific types of people that should still go to school and benefit from that if it is a lower cost? Or should they just avoid it altogether?
No. That's a very good question, because the question is, what do you want to become? You want to be an employee, go to school, go to McGill, go to Harvard, go to Stanford. Do you know?
Yeah.
You want to be an entrepreneur, I don't know where you go. So the way I learned that was when I graduated from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy right here on Long Island. We're the highest paid graduates in the world. Back then, there were still ships at sea. Now all the ships are gone because of our wages are too high.
Right.
So back in 1969, when I graduated, I was making $47,000 a year. Back then, it was huge money.
That was a lot, yeah.
And then my other class is making $120 a year because they were driving bomb carriers into Vietnam. And so they were in the zone for, I think, 18 months and was all tax-free. So you're a 22-year-old kid making $120K a year, tax-free. You did 2 or 3 trips, you were finished. 2 or 3 years, you're out. But I went to Standard Oil. And then I went to fly for the Marine Corps because the war was still on. I saw Vietnam and I said, geez, I want to participate in this one, because I was draft exempt because I was sailing for an oil company. Oil is draft exempt. So I joined the U.S. Marine Corps and went to flight school. And that's when I realized the value of education. Yeah. See, if you're going to be a pilot, go to flight school. You're going to be a doctor, go to medical school. You're going to be a dentist, go to dental school. Where do you go if you want to be an entrepreneur? Because, and the other thing too is when I was in flight school, you could already tell the good instructors because the good instructors had just come back from Vietnam. They were up to date.
Yeah.
They were saying the damn Viet Cong, they changed this, they changed that. And so the U.S. Marine Corps and Navy syllabus was sending down, you should fly this way. This guy said, don't you fly that way, you'll be dead tomorrow. Because the Viet Cong was changing, we had to change. So just one example, I was a gunship pilot. We'd come in at 1,500 and roll in. And then the Russians gave the Viet Cong was thing called an SA-7. It's called a Strela in Vietnam. And the Taliban used it against the Russians in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So
if you came in at 1,500 with this new technology called the SA-7 or the Strela, you were dead meat. You're coming in too high.
Huh.
Because a Viet Cong, with absolutely no training at all, just point, pull the trigger. This heat seeker went right up your tube, blew you out of the sky. So we're in flight school learning how to fire guns and rolling in from high, and these instructors are coming back. You do that, you're going to be dead. And that's where I learned the value of technology and education and the best teachers.
Sure.
So suddenly the teachers were telling us to come in at 1,500 feet on a gun and rocket run. We were saying, you're going to be dead. And so they were trained to come at what's called defilade. We had to fly below tree level. So everything was changing so fast. And that's when I really understood education better than anything else. Is education supposed to prepare you for the real world? And what's the real world of an academic?
Yeah, it's all theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't have the skills for the real world. They want tenure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, I think there are some initiatives that are slowly starting to pop up. It's still very in its infancy stage, like Thiel Fellowship. The billionaire Peter Thiel, he's got this program where he provides students $100,000 that are entrepreneurs to start their own business. I went through something similar in Canada where they provide money, investors, co-founders to start your own company.
Good, yeah.
And that's why I dropped out, but it's still so... I mean, come on. I followed your advice, Rob.
Smart man.
Put it into practice. But, it's still so far behind. It's still so far behind.
Well, that's the thing I'm saying is that E&S, employee and small business, self-employed, or a doctor or a lawyer, specialist,
yeah,
the mindsets are different. B&I, completely different mindsets. So on the B and the I side, you have to have a team. So on the B and the I side, I must have a bookkeeper, because the most important thing I have are accurate records. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book on accounting. That's all it is. It's a book on accounting with no numbers, just pictures. And that's why I made so much money on it.
31 million copies later. That's the trick, huh?
But
Use lots of pictures.
I'm a doodler. I doodled in school, so I'm still doodling in my book. But anyway, so on the B and the I side, you have to have the best teams. So I go onto the field. I have a friend who is an attorney, very smart attorney. He cannot figure out why I make like 50 times more money than he does and I don't work. But he's a hard-working attorney. And I go, well, number one, you're in the wrong tax bracket. And number two, you're a lone wolf. I'll kick your ass all day long. That's like going on to the football field and taking on the Patriots,
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the tax bracket for people that may not be aware of what you're talking about?
Yeah, if you're an employee across the world, the average tax bracket is 40%. So you make $100,000. That means 40K is going to the government. If you're a small business, an S quadrant, 60% goes. So these guys have become small entrepreneurs. They wind up in 60% brackets. You can edit all that out, right? The coffee. Okay. So you go, they're a 60% bracket. So my objective was to get to the I and the B and the I. So on the B side, when you have 500 employees or more, you pay 20% in taxes. So that's why we're here in New York City. When Amazon was looking to move to New York, they were going to give them all the tax breaks possible. Now you're Joe Schmo, the computer programmer. They're not going to give you any tax break at all. You pay the high taxes.
Pay more, yeah.
And then the I quadrant is a professional investor, the insider, the inside guy. And the number one asset is real estate. That's the game. It's debt and taxes. So every time I make money in the B quadrant as a business owner, as a 20% bracket, I then move my money into real estate and I pay no taxes.
Yep.
And that's the game. So I get the whole tax system of capitalism is designed to make you richer. But our schools will never teach you that, which is the battle today between you academics who are E's and S's for most sakes. And then you have the B's and the I's. Their skill sets, their mindsets, their beings, their spirits are different. So like, when they kicked Bezos out of here, no problem. He just moved.
Yeah. So for an entrepreneur that wants to one day start their business and they understand now because you're here that the school system that they're currently in is not going to provide them that, or let's say a parent is watching and they know that, their student is going to be part of the STEM field, let's say, what should they do? Should they go out there and drop out like I did and try to start their business and take that risk? What are the ways to transition off of that?
Well, that's the reason I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then the quadrant. So it gave guys like you kind of a roadmap. I mean, there's so many different ways you can get there. And then the third book's Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, the I quadrant. See, the I quadrant's the key. And as a professional investor, I use the I quadrant to analyze businesses. Like I just invested in an education company, and are you a trader? What's wrong with you? Why are you investing in an education company? I said, who funds education companies? And they go, I don't know. I said, the government. So that's why these charter schools and all that, they're pretty good investments because your source of income is the government because, the whole Constitution says every child must have an education. So they might be teaching them garbage, but I like the source of funds.
Because you're on the other side.
I'm only kidding.
Because you're on the other side of the table, right?
Yeah, I'm just sitting there going, what am I looking at? I want, if the entrepreneur has no skills and say, I got a PhD, but I can't sell, I can't negotiate, I don't have any professional skills and all this. I don't care if a PhD, I'm not going to invest in you. But if you say to me, the federal government is going to give you $1 million a month to teach kids, suddenly I like you a lot because it's the federal government that's giving you the
capitalist
money.
here, right?
I'm not that mercenary, but I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to that. And then I'm just going to invest that money in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about money. So we talked about this idea of the rich mindset. We understand how broken the education model is because it's a lot of it, as we mentioned, modeled back to the 18th century of Prussia and the factory system.
It was what you're talking about had two purposes. One, to train employees, and second, to train soldiers. People would just do as they're told without thinking.
Right. Was that because they were fighting Prussia and they realized how efficient the soldiers were in the war and they wanted to model after that?
Well, they were taking farmers.
Right.
You see, the whole thing went agrarian, industrial, today technology. So back then, they were trying to get these farmers who were pretty independent little guys, and they work for themselves. So they're trying to train them from farmers or S quadrant, self-employed, to employees or soldiers.
Right.
People who would do as they're told.
Right. And the education system hasn't been updated since that time,
No,
basically.
it's actually gone backwards, in my opinion.
In what way?
Well, they're misinforming and miseducating. Look, the biggest thing for an entrepreneur is you've got to learn how to make mistakes. And the school punishes you for making mistakes. Second, you have to operate in a team. You know, everybody talks about team, except in school. If you take tests as a team, you're called cheaters.
Yeah.
So just those two mind constructs. The average guy goes out there afraid of making a mistake and starts a business and they make mistakes, obviously. Then they don't have a team.
Gotcha.
And the odds are stacked against them.
Yeah.
So my wife and I started with a bookkeeper. Why a bookkeeper? Because the number one thing an entrepreneur must have is accurate records. I made so many guys show up and they said, where are your records? They want me to fund their company. They don't have any records. They have no numbers. I said, how do I know if you're good or bad? Well, yeah, man, it's a good concept. We're doing a lot
We're
of good.
going to change the world.
Yeah.
This is like a revolutionary concept.
We're good people.
Yeah.
You know, I have a master's in art.
Yeah. We're from the same city, you know?
I know, yeah.
You know?
We grew up together.
Yeah.
Oh, I had this one guy. Oh, it was painful. My classmate, Hawaiian guy, you know, and Hawaiians have a different culture than the Japanese culture. And
what
he
happened?
says he wanted $2 million. I says, for what? I said, because all of my kids are unemployed.
No, that wasn't the real reason,
Yeah.
was it?
He says they've all lost their jobs.
So you wanted just to loan money.
No, I was supposed to give him the money because we're family.
That's awkward.
No, but I'm not trying to pick on the Hawaiians.
Yeah.
The what are they called? The people from Egypt. What are they called? These guys who are, I forget. Their culture is if you have something, it's mine. I forget what do they call it? They're gypsies. My friend is a gypsy, and he says in the gypsy culture that if you have two, one is theirs. I'm going, what? But then I started thinking about my friends, you know, my classmates who are hardcore Hawaiians. They're great people. Yeah. They can sing and dance and all this, but family is everything. And so if his family's hurting and I have extra, it's up to me, because we're all part of the same family, to help each other.
Is that like an expectation that he has?
It's cultural. And that's what really hurts most entrepreneurs. It's like we started a whole conversation. What's your family culture? What were your family's belief systems? What were their values? You know, and they all play a factor inside your success in so-called the real world outside of the family. And I'm not blaming my friend who was Hawaiian, because, you know, I'm just saying his culture was different than mine.
Yeah.
Same as my culture is different than my own family. You know, my brothers and sisters all have master's degrees and all that, and I'm going, they send their kids to college and going, oh, have a good time, you know. But they still believe, the Japanese still believe in college and saving money and job security.
Yeah.
And becoming a government employee.
Sure.
I'd rather shoot myself.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese, and because we had Stevie Aoki. Are you familiar with Stevie Aoki at all?
No.
He's like a big DJ guy, younger guy, but in his 40s now, but also Japanese.
That's really young.
And
half my age.
You look 40 years old. But he also resonated the same thing. Koreans are the same way, right? We're probably one of the most conservative societies when it comes to that, because we grew up in in Korea they call it chaebol. I think in Japan, what do they call it?
I don't know. The big.
Anyways, a conglomerate days, right, where a couple of companies own the entire economy there, and they're just so used to living in that world.
Well, the Japanese had a thing called kumiai. Kumiai was that if you lived in the same neighborhood in Hawaii and you were Japanese. All the Japanese stuck together.
Mm.
And my father, who was 6'4", for Japanese is pretty big, the kumie would come and, talk to our family about the Japanese sticking together. My father threw them out. And these are he says, look, we're Americans. Get that in your head right now. So I had this conflicting cultural values.
Sure.
So again, for every entrepreneur, first thing you must inspect is what was your cultural heritage. Not that it's right or wrong. What were the values?
Did you just struggle with that when you were growing up in high school?
Hey, when I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I almost went to the devil for that one, Because Japanese, you don't ever criticize your father. Same as Korean and Chinese, right? Father is the king.
Yeah.
It's very patriarchal.
Yeah.
So when I was asked, well, how do you feel about writing a book about your father? I said, well, he's dead. I had to wait for him to die before I wrote the book because he would have killed me. My family was ready to kill me.
Yeah, I was gonna. How did you overcome that?
It's because I
Jesus.
said he's dead, and that didn't go over well either.
Oh my God, were you close to them though when you were growing up?
Yeah, I had a great father. Both my rich dad and my poor dad were great men,
Yeah,
but
you both respect.
they're two opposite guys. The one guy really believed in school, but he didn't know what he didn't know.
Mm.
And my rich dad never went to school, and he didn't know what he didn't know. But the two made kind of a whole education. So one was a capitalist, one was a socialist.
Yeah.
And so then we have Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, and I don't know, all this other stuff going on. It's kind of hysterical. When you step back, you look at it from values.
I mean, you got two in the race now, right? Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders.
Well, do you realize that if I ran for office, I'd be younger than all of them?
It's crazy.
It's great. They're all old.
It's crazy.
No wonder Biden can't remember things. I can't remember how to get in a taxi anymore.
Jesus Christ. We also had Andrew Yang on in New York when
How
he was
is
running.
he?
He's doing good. He just announced something that he's starting called Move Humanity Forward. A lot of people thought he was running for mayor, actually, for New York,
Really?
which he still might. I'm not sure. I don't think he's announced it, but he's starting a nonprofit, basically.
Give me a break. You know what nonprofit stands for?
No.
Tax exempt. That's what it really means.
Yeah, probably.
It means that they can't make money, so they're going to, I know the game. I sit there and chuckle and laugh all the time.
Well, I can introduce you to Andrew if you want.
Yeah. I don't understand how they can pay everybody. I fought for capitalism. I realize it's 80-20. It's called Pareto's Law. Pareto's Law is the 80-20 rule, right? Something like that. So 20% of the people need socialism. They need to be taken care of. But 80% can make money on their own. So why would I give somebody with the capabilities to be the 80%, give them money?
Sure.
Doesn't make sense to me.
What did you think about the UBI? I'm assuming you've seen
Well,
feelings.
I think, unfortunately, it's coming just because our school system is teaching people to be victims. I don't know if you saw me on Patrick Ben David. That guy's a genius, man. I love working with him.
He's smart, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, is he smart? I used to work with Tony Robbins, and he has that quickness of brain.
Yep.
I'm a little Hawaiian, I'm a little slower. But anyway, he goes, I told him, I said, during the agrarian age, the church was the center. So every small town had a church. So it was very spiritual, and that was the culture. We shifted to the industrial age, and then weaponry came up. So we could now kill. They went from swords to guns to machine guns to rockets to drones, So during the industrial age, they started building statues to war heroes. So that was, as a Marine, they have the Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima, and they have Robert E. Lee and Grant. And so everybody respected war heroes and stuff like that. Now they're tearing down Robert E. Lee and Grant and all these guys because America is now worshiping the victim.
Victim mentality.
The victim mentality. And that's what I said on Patrick Bet-David. And a couple of my friends called me and said, "You're an asshole." And I said, "Well, you're entitled to your opinion, but I've been called better, and stuff like this." But I said, we're raising victims. Our schools are pumping out victims. And the reason I like this guy, Jordan Peterson, is he says, it's not what a person stands for. You see that? He did this great thing. It's what are they against? He says a lot of times they'll stand up there and say, well, I stand for socialism, but they're really against the rich. And so that's why when you talk about Andrew Yang and Pete Buttigieg and all this stuff, I wonder what they really stand for. What are they really fighting for? So I'm upfront with you. I'm fighting for capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, I fight for education, that we should have better education. I'm not saying anything else inside that. I don't have a hidden agenda.
Sure.
So when these guys are talking about we're going to fix the homeless, I said, what does that mean? And so what Jordan Peterson says, they're against the rich. They're not for the homeless. They're against the rich. And that's where most of the people on the left are. And I don't know that because I'm not political, not Republican or Democrat. You don't have any religious agenda. You know, you want to believe in God, fine. Don't want to believe in God, fine. But I want to know what you really stand for, not what you pretend to be standing for.
Yeah.
So when Andrew Yang says he's going to start a nonprofit, as a capitalist, I already know he can't raise capital. Because look, I'm doing the same thing, but I can raise capital. You know, I'm a hardcore teacher.
Yeah. What do you think is the difference between you and Andrew Yang in that case?
You can't raise capital. Not an entrepreneur.
So what's the skill sets that missing?
I don't know. You better figure that one out pretty quickly. Look, understand something. I don't have stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You know why?
Why?
I can make up my own assets. I wrote this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, 31 million copies. I make $5 a book. You do the math on that one. I create my cash flow game. I think I make $6 or $7 a game in 50 languages. I know how to sell.
Yeah, but don't you have to invest that money once you make it so that it's in a less risky asset class?
I don't even need money. That's the worst part. The next book I'm coming out with is called The Infinite Return. Is that when you have the mindset of a capitalist, you don't need money.
Okay.
See, rule number one in Rich Dad Poor Dad is the rich don't work for money. Most people miss that one. But that goes back to 1971 when Nixon took us out the gold standard.
Yeah.
And money became fake money.
Yeah.
So anyway, my Rich Dad was preparing me to think about how can I make money without money. And the way I do it, I create an asset, like a book. I'm not saying write books because that's tough industry. But I write a book today. I sell 50 licenses to 50 different languages. And I collect royalties for years, the long tail.
Yeah.
So my money just keeps coming in. From with that, I borrow. So let's say I make $10 in a book. I'll borrow $50 to invest in real estate. I step up my basis for depreciation, amortization, and appreciation.
Gotcha.
That's financial education.
Yeah.
Not that garbage they teach you about invest for the long term of the stock market. Why would I do that when I can make up my own assets?
Yeah.
You know, that's what entrepreneurs do. Every entrepreneur should be making up their own assets and staying out of the stock market. That's my point of view. But can everybody do it? No, of course not.
Sure.
But I've screwed up enough times to prove I can do it. And my accountant will back me up. Yeah, the guy is an idiot, but he does create assets.
Yeah, I mean, you have this great core competency, which is the ability to communicate something that's very complicated or what has been made complicated because why would people go to school and pay for that money if it sounds simple? So you made it really simple using pictures and everything.
Right.
And you've been able to find leverage. They say that you can find leverage through people, capital, or especially now it's media and software. Yeah. And you've been able to do all three of those.
Yeah, and trade, you know, Rich Dad is a brand, man.
Yeah.
What that's worth.
Yeah, no, it's impressive what you've done. It's amazing.
But I can sell. And that's why my first job when I left the Marine Corps was to join Xerox so I could learn how to sell because of being Japanese, right? I was really shy.
Yeah.
You know, I could kill people from the sky. I was a Marine, I was, you know, decorated hero and all this crap. But I couldn't pick up a girl in the bar. And when I said that to my Rich Dad, he says, your sex life sucks, doesn't it? I said, oh, it's terrible. He says, because you can't sell. You can't sell. And so he says, if you don't sell, you're going to be lonely and horny all your life. So that kind of inspired me to learn how to sell.
Yeah, yeah.
So I joined Xerox, you know what I mean? But you have to do what it takes. So Andrew Yang is a good, smart, very smart guy. He can't sell. He doesn't know how to create an asset so somebody will give him the money. Then he doesn't know how to invest that money so he pays no tax on it. That's why he has to go the tax exempt or the, what do you call that? I don't know what you call this. I don't think in their words.
Well, he has been able to raise insane amounts of money for
as tax deferred. You know what I mean? For tax advantages.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, he's just in the wrong system.
No, I mean he's doing good for himself.
Yes.
But as an entrepreneur, I'm kind of in the same. You talk about UBI, right?
Yeah. Universal
Basic Income. We're on the opposite sides of the camp, but I understand why he does it.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur, you don't need a UBI. You don't even need a job. Think about that. See, that's where you're going right now. You will eventually never need a job, and you'll never need money if you keep pushing the boundaries of your mental abilities. That's called the infinite return.
Yeah.
When I write a book, I have no money in the deal, and I collect money for the rest of my life.
The royalties.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, royalty, I mean, that's what Richard Branson did basically by licensing.
That's what Trump does also.
That's what Trump does as well.
That's what Bezos does also.
How does Bezos do that?
Well, he has a company that he has all these millions of people working for him. The money keeps coming in.
You see,
and then he floats it on the stock market, which is all free money. He wouldn't become a billionaire if he was selling just Amazon. He floated it on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And that's the game. It's on the B and the I side, not the E and the S side.
Absolutely. So let's get into, because we're talking about Jeff Bezos, we're talking about Trump. Let's get into the average middle-class person that is perhaps starting this, they're learning your concepts, they're getting benefit from it, but they're not making hundreds of $1 million yet, right? Someone that's 25 probably has $50,000 to $100,000 in savings. For someone that has that amount of money, how do you think they should invest it?
Well, I mean, everybody's different. That's what I'm saying. The first inspection. That's why one of the guys I like is Eckhart Tolle, Tolle, and Mike Singer. It's all these new guys that they're the new spiritualists coming out. They're like the new Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad, you know. And I think you have to have a spirituality to you. I'm not saying if religion does it for you, fine, you know. But it never worked for me. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But anyway, there's a point where you have to have some faith in your abilities,
right,
and guidance. And so I know if I do what I consider the right thing.
Well, what would you do if you were 25 today and you had $50,000 in the bank? Would you invest it back into yourself with your education, because that amount of money is not going to do that much damage in the market or real estate, or is it different if you had $500,000? No.
Idiots are idiots, you know. That's why, you know, most guys, most major league athletes are broke within 6 years or something. They lose everything.
Sure. Or a lottery winner.
Yeah, because money never makes you rich. And so the thing is to invest in your life experiences, your mentors. So the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is choosing between two different teachers. You know, if I followed my poor dad, I'd probably be a government employee in Hawaii, you know, or a tenured teacher.
Yeah.
So it's a hard choice. You got to choose your teachers wisely and your life experiences. Like we were talking about, I took, you know, 3 companies public through Toronto. I mean, first through VC, Vancouver Stock Exchange, and I had to migrate to the Toronto Stock Exchange. Why did I do that? To learn how to raise capital on public markets. Now, the average entrepreneur never does that. You know, they keep opening their pizza shop and they open 2 pizza shops. And that's about it, because they're in it just for the money. I wanted to learn something, so I took my first was an oil company in Portugal, and I took that public, and everybody told me there's no oil in Portugal, and I found out the hard way. They're right. There's no oil there. That company crashed and burned like a airplane coming out of the sky, you know. And then the next thing I started a silver company in Argentina, and we struck silver, and we did very well.
Yeah.
And then I started a gold company in China, and the Chinese took it. So
Jesus.
That was a priceless experience. You know, aren't you bitter? I go, yeah, but that's what I did it for. You understand that? I did it for that.
So you're saying people that have, let's say, 50,000, 100,000, they should just go out there,
look for a teacher and look for experiences. So
education, take risks,
real life experiences.
Make mistakes. Yeah. Gotcha. Don't worry about like making 10% in the stock market. You're saying with that money.
No, that's a waste of time. I mean, it depends on you. I don't need stock market to make money. I got that to raise capital, but not to make money. So there's so much to learn. That's the biggest problem. So like I said, you know, the guy pushing drugs on the street, he's no different than Jeff Bezos with Amazon, just the scale.
Right, one's legal, one's not.
No, those guys bigger than Bezos in drugs. Trust me.
Yeah.
And I run into them.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
How?
The world's filled with those guys.
So as you travel.
Yeah, you just bump in. My father ran for a political office. He ran for lieutenant governor, the poor dad. The first person you have to kiss the ring on is the criminals.
In in Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, that's, the governor of Hawaii is a guy named Burns, John Burns. His partner was, I think, something, but they were partners.
Yeah.
Both police officers. One was on the side of the government. One was the side of the crime. That's the game.
Sure.
I think people better wake up that the mafia and those guys, they're real characters. I mean, they really are in business all over the world.
Yeah.
And if you think they're not, then you're living in dreamland. So my father had to kiss the ring of this guy, Napi Palava, who was the head of one Hawaiian syndicate in Hawaii. And you got to play the game. Politics is a dirty, dirty game.
Sure.
Dirty, dirty game. There's a book called Sunny Sky, Shady Characters, and it's about the crime syndicates of Hawaii. My father, the reason I recommend to all my friends is in Hawaii, because that's what my father was talking about. In Hawaii, the Supreme Court justices, they got caught too. The Supreme Court justices of Hawaii, these highly esteemed men, got caught up in all this crime through Kamehameha schools.
Yeah.
Criminal operations, all of them.
Crazy. Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm a pessimist. I'm saying just be aware, That's like saying, oh, why can't we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya? We'll get rid of the police. We'll get rid of the military. We'll all live together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And and I think that's what the left is trying to. I'm not Republican or Democrat. People live in dreamland. Wake up. This is a real world, and there's people going to steal. Another book I'm going to write is Hiring Thieves. Jesus, I can't believe how many times I've had employees steal from me. I'm going, my God, I couldn't do it. Not that I'm a saint. Not that I'm going on the short list for saints. But several times I've lost a lot of money because I hired the people that steal from me.
Have you improved how you read people?
It's almost impossible, but you have to. I mean, it's my fault. I mean, I take full responsibility because, I didn't, as Reagan said, trust but verify.
Yeah.
The trouble is that people verify with the guys I should have not trusted.
Oh, I see.
So
you started the wrong foot, basically.
Well, do you know what I mean? It's like the first guy that stole all my money was my accountant in my nylon wallet business, Stanley, my CPA.
Uh-oh.
And he was so afraid that we were going to go down, and we did go down, but he wanted to get his money out first. So I raised $100,000 extra. I brought it in. This was years and years ago as a kid. And Stanley says, I said to Stanley, Stanley, will this help? Does this solve the problem? He goes, yeah. I forgot to define whose problem it solved. Stanley's problem, and he ran off with it. Now again, it was the best thing that happened to me because I woke up.
Mm.
And I think for young people, I think that's really the thing. Keep waking up, keep learning. On the good side, you meet some of the best people on earth. Like my team of advisors right now, we all came about because of bad partnerships. Like Kenny McElroy, we've made millions together in real estate. I met him through a bad partner. And he and I started talking and said, just how can we be so stupid? Because we're so stupid with the same partner, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
When we met each other, I said, well, let's not do that to each other. We've made millions.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So there's always a silver lining, but you've got to look for it and be aware there's people who do not really subscribe to your philosophies.
Sure.
And they come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, after university, I went straight to Argentina. I had no idea this was happening. It's getting worse now, but there are locals telling me that they woke up one day and money in the bank disappeared.
I took, my kid brother, he lives in Hawaii, he's the greatest guy, I took him to Argentina because he wouldn't wake up. So we're out there in Argentina. I introduced to my friend. My friend was an engineer, probably a little younger than my brother and I. And he says, I was a millionaire in Argentina with US dollars. And one day I woke up and the money was gone. And so the bank said, oh, don't worry, we'll give you $1 million back in pesos. So my brother sat there and he says, is this why you brought me here? I said, yeah, wake up.
Wake up, yeah.
Because you're Japanese. Japanese save money. And Japan is the most screwed up country financially because they're all highly educated savers. When are you going to wake up? Japan's debt to GDP, I think, is like 240% right now. Wow. It's the worst in the whole world.
Wow.
And they all save money. If the Japanese didn't save money, Japan would be gone. And my friends inside Japan say the banks now lend debtors money so the debtor can pay the bank back. So what happens, the debtor gets deeper in debt, but the bank looks like everybody's paying their bills. And I said, I don't know what the Japanese have a word for it, bakatari.
Which is?
You're an idiot.
Okay.
And the Japanese are very good people, hardworking, diligent, and all this. They have no financial education. They believe in saving money. The Yakuza is their mafia. It runs rampant through that place.
Yeah.
And they still pretend.
Yeah. Well, saving money in this day and age, I think Warren Buffett's got $130 billion in cash right now waiting because there is probably going to be some sort of a recession. People say it's a correction right now because of the corona, but it's a rough time. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I love crashes. The best time to get rich is in a crash. The problem is this time I think this crash might last a long time. The 1929 crash lasted 25 years. That's how long it lasted. I think this one might be at least 20 years, this next depression, because the numbers are so astronomical. Like I said, if Japan is 260% debt to GDP, 240 to 60%, America is 115% debt to GDP. That's much, and increasing $1 trillion a year.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to pay it back? And then, my book here, Who Stole My Pension? The pensions are bankrupt. Defined benefit pensions for school teachers, firefighters, and police officers estimate between $9 to $14 trillion underfunded. What's going to happen when that goes down? So that's why I sit and I watch and I go, this one might be a long one. And just today, as we're talking, the 10-year went below 1%. You can't keep printing money. It's never worked in history, at least as far as I know. So that's what I watch. On the other side of it, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur because if you're smart, you have a good spirit, and you'll learn quickly. See, the greatest thing about an entrepreneur is how fast can you learn. When you look at the 7 deadly sins, the biggest tragedy is ego. So ego or vainglory is the road straight to hell. And so you got to, I tell you I made mistakes. I tell you I screwed up. I'm definitely not on the short list for saint. But you'd better be honest, and people trust you, and you better keep your word. You're only as good as your word. Yeah. So actions and words must be in integrity.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of the best businesses have started when there was a recession, right? There was this idea of Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I'm sure you're a fan of him.
Oh, he is my hero, man.
Anti-fragile, stronger.
I love
diamonds
his
get
stuff.
stronger, right?
Yeah.
As an under pressure. So it's a very interesting concept, but people fear it. A lot of people fear it.
Yeah, but his lesson is you go to the gym, you get stronger. It hurts for a while, but you get stronger.
Yeah.
And people are coming out of school weaker today, and that's what disturbs me. And then Patrick Bet-David, man, that guy is amazing what he's teaching.
Yeah.
And so there's many young guys coming up that are teaching brilliant stuff, and that's YouTube. Which is a whole new channel, right? Is social media now the channel? So if you're in traditional media, you're in trouble. But if you're moving with the trends, you're in good shape right now.
Sure.
So that's the difference.
Well, Nassim Nicholas Taleb also talks about in Black Swan. He talks about this idea of the barbell strategy,
Right.
where he kind of uses like the S&P as like an analogy where most people think this idea of like putting yourself into medium risk is the safest option when in fact you're not really getting much of the upside, but you're getting all of the downside as well. So you're allocating risk in a way that is not actually helping you diversify, and you're actually putting yourself in more risk. And he advocates this idea of putting yourself into very risky assets in a small amount and the rest into, let's say in this case, cash, bonds, and that way...
even bonds are in trouble now.
Bonds are, I guess, yeah. So most likely cash, where it's very liquid.
When I was your age, the smart guys were in bonds. Nobody was in stocks. Today, everybody's in stocks and bonds. I'm going, holy mackerel.
Sure,
okay.
Sure. What are your thoughts on this idea of barbell strategy where there is asymmetric returns where, let's say you put 10% into something that's super risky, the maximum you can lose is that 10%, so you still have that 90% still uphold.
Well, it depends upon the person. Like I'm saying, I encourage anybody listening to this or any entrepreneur, get to the point where you don't need money. It's called the infinite return. And that's my next book coming out next year.
Yeah.
When you get to the point where you don't need money, you're home free. You'll never need money. You don't care. You can always put a deal together. You can always create an asset out of nothing. You know, it's like, I don't know what else. It's the power of God-given power. So like I said, when I write a book, I'm selling 50 copies, 50 licenses, day one. And let's say I get 10,000 a license. How much is that? 50 times 10,000? Is it 500,000?
50 times 10,000?
Yeah.
That, yeah, 500,000.
Yeah. So I'm in the black immediately. What does it cost me? Maybe 10,000 to write a book. Do you know? So I'm in the black. The same thing if I trade a stock. I would buy a stock at $1, it goes up to 10, and I sell. So I have all free trading stock. I have no money in it. That's what Buffett's doing. They're all infinite return guys.
Sure.
You have no money into the deal, and you can do it with anything.
What are other examples that you would recommend? Stocks, you mentioned, books.
Well, real estate is my first deal. Was I bought a condo on the island of Maui for $18,000, and I gave them a credit card to put the $2,000, so $1,800 10% down payment, and I made $25 for it. So I made $25 from no money at all, 100% debt. So I love debt. And the average guy's afraid of debt. So it's just mindset. It's what you know. How do you practice? I have made a lot of mistakes. I've never lost money in real estate. Never. Because I invest a lot in my financial education in real estate. Why? Debt and taxes. The more I can use all the debt I want and pay no taxes. I love it. I love it. There's a God somewhere. Why would I buy stocks? I don't understand that game. You can make money quickly.
Sure.
And stocks are good because they're illiquid. I mean, they're liquid. You can get out of the stocks real quick, and real estate's dangerous because you can't get out of it. But that's why I've got to study more. So anyway, I the biggest thing I can say to any entrepreneur is learn. Be an active learner, low ego. It's tough when you're successful, because when my nylon and Velcro surfer wallet business went to the moon, I was crashing down right after it. It was straight to my head.
While the ego is still
man,
there,
it was,
vanity ego is still there.
Yeah,
Right?
it was straight to bed. I thought I walked on water, except there was no water. There was only air below me.
So
I learned the hard way. I don't learn it easy.
Well, having learned that, is your flow now? Is it that you have, talking about ESBI? Is your flow now? You have these active businesses. Let's say books or business as well. You use the profits from that, and you invest all of it into real estate. Is that kind of the way your money flows?
No. I only invest in real estate. Right now, I'm out of the real estate market. I mean, I still have my real estate holdings, but I'm not aggressively buying because the prices are too high, because private equity and the hedge funds went into real estate. And now it makes it's like the stock market. It's a disconnect between the price and the value. So these guys, my best friend just became a billionaire because he took all of his real estate holdings and sold it to a hedge fund. He's laughing all the way. He says it's going to crash on him. It's fake valuations.
Good timing.
It's based upon today's valuations, maybe not tomorrow's.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he and I had a race. Who was going to be first millionaire? I beat him, but he beat me to a billionaire.
So his idea is that he sold it to a hedge fund. Once the house market goes crashing down, he's just going to buy it all back at a fraction of the price.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Because you think about entrepreneurs. You're not manual labor. So you're working with your mind, your body, your spirit, and your emotions. You're just timing things, observing things. You have to have good friends, people you trust implicitly.
Yeah.
And I have fantastic staff. I trust them with. Some of my people have been around me for 20 years. Some of my best partners are 40 years. And we trust each other. So that takes time. There's also been a lot of crooks along the way. Some. Like I found out, I won't mention names, but some of my CEO and my president were stealing money again.
Recently.
They can't sell. They can't sell. My friend who's my accountant, Tom Wheelwright, he says, he looks at returns all the time. He says, people who can't sell steal.
You're saying they're not actually stealing money, but they're stealing time and valuable resources from you. They're actually stealing money from you because they're not selling enough, you're saying.
They don't know how to sell.
Okay, but they're not actually going in and stealing money from you.
Oh, they are. There's so many ways you can.
I see what you're saying, but I get what you're saying, but yeah, okay.
One of the best experiences I had, I was a young Marine. I was in Hawaii. I still couldn't chase women because I was so shy.
Yeah.
So I got a job working as a manager of a nightclub in Waikiki. And so it was with the big, back today it's called Weston. I don't know what it was back then.
Sure.
So the general manager comes up and talks to me and says, "Hey, your PC is too high." I said, "What's PC?" He says, "Your pour count. Somebody's stealing alcohol. They're not stealing alcohol, but they're not charging for drinks." He says, "Catch them." For 6 months, I could not figure it out. I couldn't figure out how the bartenders and the cocktail waiters were stealing money from me. So when I told my rich dad that, he says, "I told you." I said, "What's that?" He says, "If your bartenders and waitresses are smarter than you, don't get into the business."
It's too risky.
And my other friend, I was going to buy a professional team. And he said to me, he says,
You were going to buy a professional team?
Yeah.
Which sport?
Baseball.
Baseball, okay.
No, just not because I liked baseball, but just because the baseball team was in trouble and I was going to buy it. And
So you thought there was money to be made there?
Yeah, but I do it. I do it because I want to learn, not because I'm interested in the team. So I ran the numbers, I ran the process, I found out about the business and all that. And finally, this friend of mine came up to me. And he says, and he's an NBA player for 18 years. He says, "I'll give you lesson number one in business." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Never invest in a business where the employees make more than you do."
Interesting.
And that's why it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because the more successful the team got, the more money the employees made. You can never win, he says, until you flip it.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't want to do that." So anyway, please listen to all you entrepreneurs out there. It's the biggest learning adventure you can go through. Even the bad lessons are good lessons if you have the humility to learn from them.
Yeah. I mean, I like your mindset because your whole thing is you're going into these different projects and you have this growth mindset. We're talking on growth minds, obviously, but you're always in it to learn something new.
Anti-fragile. So that's Nassim Taleb. He says the moment you go into the unknown, you're getting destabilized, but you're getting stronger. And the average person, they want security and less risk. They're getting stupider and less fragile, more fragile.
Yeah.
So you become anti-fragile when you go into the unknown.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I explained that to my company. I said, in my company, I said, "I don't care if you make a mistake. I do care if you don't tell me about it."
Gotcha.
Big difference.
Speaking of unstable, we're probably in a very fragile market right now, and a lot of people are, in many ways, freaking out. What do you recommend people do in a market that is potentially heading into depression? Should they be saving cash and thinking about, becoming more liquid? Like, what are some of the things that they should do?
Well, it depends upon the cash. If you're in Argentine, is it pesos?
Pesos, Argentine pesos, yeah.
I wouldn't touch it. I'd save gold and silver. See, what's his name? What's his Bridgewater's guy?
Ray Dalio, yeah.
He says it depends upon the currency you're in.
Sure.
He says, so like Zimbabwe, their debt is financed with external money. Japan is internally financed. So that's why the depression doesn't hurt them as badly. So you have to learn so much about that. So I own millions and millions and millions and millions and millions in gold because I started buying gold in 1973 when it was illegal for Americans to own gold. And I like gold and silver because there's no counterparty risk. There's no other party to it. Gold and silver are God's money. So people say, "Well, it's not a good investment." I said, "Yeah, but I sleep at night. What's that worth?"
Sure.
So I don't care if the dollar is corrupt, the U.S. dollar is corrupt, but it's the strongest currency in a horrible currency world.
Yeah.
So if you're U.S., save dollars. You're in Argentina, don't save gold.
Right.
Save Bitcoin.
You think Bitcoin would be?
I mean Bitcoin's got its problems too. But
Sure.
I'm saying, So when you say save money, you got to say what
currency?
Yeah, what currency?
Sure.
Do you know? It's like the Swiss franc used to be the strongest currency of all, but now they're backed by the FANG stocks. And so I'm kind of backing off of the Swiss, whatever they use. I don't even know anymore. I just kind of, it's almost instinctive.
Sure, sure. I mean, the Argentines, what I found interesting was the way we look at gold, because I think you're completely dead on. The way we look at gold as a way of hedging, the Argentines look at Bitcoin and the way they look at U.S. dollars.
Correct.
As a way to hedge that.
Correct.
So
it's more stable.
I think you're spot on with that. Yeah, for sure.
You know what's funny about Canada, though?
What?
How much gold you guys got?
I don't know. A lot, I guess.
None.
None?
Yeah. Canadians are just as silly as the English.
But there's like so much land that.
But they have a lot of gold. They sold off their gold.
Ah, interesting.
So,
to who?
I don't know. They just got rid of their gold. But they have gold in the ground. But it's because, Canada's resource rich. But the guys running your country are idiots. Jeez.
Let's not get into that too, Paul. Robert, we're going to piss so many people off of this podcast. I mean, how many people have we did so far? How far are we going with this?
But you got to be smarter than your politicians.
This podcast is going to be canceled.
Yeah, what about Trump? What about Bernie? I said, what about him? I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got to be smarter than them. Because,
well, you're not dependent on them.
Yeah.
Because of infinite returns,
exactly.
you're not creating your own assets.
And so if Bernie says this, if Trump says that, if Biden says this, I go, okay, good. Or Yang says this. I still got to be smarter than them with my money because it is my money.
Sure.
And if you're hoping that Trump, Trump's my friend, I'm not counting on him to save my money for me.
Mm.
Yeah, I do what he does, but I don't. I'm not counting on him.
Gotcha.
And if Andrew Yang wants UBI, Universal Basic Income, that's MMT, Marxist money theory. I think you got to look at it as a comedy show.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reality show for sure with Trump in there. I mean, it's a gong fest.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's kind of funny, but
you got the Donald, on one side, reality show guy.
Do you still talk to him, by the way?
No, not. The last time I talked to him, he announced he was on my show, my Rich Dad Radio show. He says, "I'm going to run for president." I said, "Good for you. I better stand far away from you." Because all he's a target now.
Did you think it was a joke, though?
No. He's a good guy. I mean, he says things he shouldn't say.
Right.
He
could be a good guy, but also
there's no two Donald Trumps. He is exactly as you see him, and he shouldn't tweet and all that. Well, I'll agree with that.
Mm.
But I'm not into politics. So I listen to Bernie Sanders. I give the guy a lot of credit. To admit to be a socialist in America, as Mexican friends would say, big cojones. And Pete Buttigieg, a gay guy, and all this, and going, I don't know if he's the husband or the wife, but you gotta have such guts. And then Andrew Yang, I'm gonna give everybody money. I'm going, thank you.
It's a catchy headline, no?
Yeah, I watch all this stuff. It's a TV show as far as I'm concerned. But if you're counting on them, you're a bigger idiot than they are, So, and then Pocahontas, I just love her, She, how did that happen,
Rob, you're sounding like a real Republican right now.
I'm not a Republican. I'm a cartoon commentator. I think it's hysterical.
You're just observing this whole scenery.
Yeah,
basically.
but I still have millions in gold, and I still have my real estate. I'm still offshore many things, and I don't pay any taxes legally.
Yeah,
so I can laugh. If you're not there yet, you can't laugh. But I wouldn't count on those guys to save my ass.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, it's going to be the biggest adventure of your life, as long as you want to keep learning. But if you just want to make a few bucks, you'll be taxed to death.
Yeah.
That's the S quadrant, ESBI. That's the problem. And small business loans and all, they don't give you any money. It's hard to raise capital as an S.
Sure.
Crowdfunding and all that stuff, but I'd rather go to Wall Street. I'd rather raise my own capital.
Yeah.
But those are skill sets. So I say to every entrepreneur, look at it as the biggest education plan you'll ever go through. I don't care if you have a college degree or not, but you better learn really quickly, fast, have good people around you, and keep studying.
Yep. Okay. Well, Rob, let me end off because I know you came in because you wrote this book called "Who Stole My Pension." Talk to us a little bit about what people don't know about pensions today, what the average person does not understand about how pensions work today.
Well, the pensions are bankrupt. They're gone. My father, my poor dad worked for the government, and he lost his pension in 1972. And he still told me to go and get a job and all that. So my poor dad became a poor man When he lost his job, his paycheck, and his pension.
How did he lose it? Like he just got
He
nothing?
ran against the governor. See, the governor was a crook. John Burns, police officer. If you read the book, Sunny Sky, Shady Characters, you'll find out exactly this. He's an investigative report. I forget his name now. But he said everything my father was saying to me. They're all buddies. Shady Sky, Sunny Characters starts with Don Ho. Nice Don Ho. And they were all in cahoots. Supreme Court justices were all in cahoots with Kamehameha schools, the most richest school system in America for Hawaiian kids.
Yeah.
And all these estates just ripping people off. So my father, after he became the governor's staff, resigned. And he said, I cannot, in good conscience, ethically, morally, and legally, I cannot be part of your staff. So he made the mistake of running against him. This is while I was in Vietnam, defending the country from I don't know who. But anyway, I come home and my father's bankrupt. He's bankrupt. No pension, no paycheck, no job. And he's still telling me to go back to school, get my PhD. I said, I'm going to wind up like you. He said, go fly for the airlines. He read who stole my pensions. My guys, my friends who flew for United, they're all broke. Nobody knows this.
Right, but why is this? Is this happening to everyone that has a
all
pension?
over the world?
Okay.
It says back here on the back of who stole my pension. What's America's #1 export?
Toxic assets.
Derivatives. Still manufacture them.
Subprime mortgages, yeah.
Yep, subprime mortgages.
So is there stuff that, because my mom's a nurse and she's under a pension plan, union members are, for people that are relying on pensions or have family members or friends that are on pensions, what can they do
That's
to actually
That's how I
take that
wrote
next
the
step?
book. Because
Yeah.
not all pensions are bad, but understand CalPERS, which is the biggest state pension plan in America, that's California state teachers, they're $1 trillion underfunded. The reason people are evacuating California right now is because they know California is about to go bankrupt because of pensions. So if CalPERS goes down, so does the stock market goes down, so goes the 401k. So this coronavirus is one thing, but it's really a house of cards or a set of dominoes ready to start to fall. And it all went back to 1971, the year Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and we could print phony money. And we're still printing phony money.
Yeah.
So the rich are getting richer if you're playing that game of investing, and the poor and middle class are getting poor.
Yeah, the first thing that I realized where things start to look a little bit backwards when it comes to pension fund money is that, because I'm in the tech world, so when someone that's in venture capital, private equity, they want to go raise their fund, first thing they go to is pension. So it's a little bit backwards because people are giving money into a pool that goes into a pension fund.
That's the book.
And
you got it.
They go
and
give money to other managers to manage the money.
You got it.
So
you got it.
But what do they do? Like, what do people do? Like, what does my mom do to make sure she's protected? Is she just completely helpless in this state?
What you can do is what you can do. I hate to be flippant about what you can do.
Sure.
Say if you're a stock trader, you understand how to short the market and play the options market, you're in hog's heaven. And when this baby starts coming down, like right now, a lot of guys are making more money as it crashes. You make more money in a market crash, but if you don't have that skill set, you're in trouble.
So develop the skill set, educate yourself.
What do you want to learn how to do? I don't recommend it. That's hard.
Yeah.
So I saw this coming back in '72 when I came back from Vietnam. I went, oh my God, And then my poor dad said to go back to school, get my PhD. I said, poor, helpless, and desperate. And I couldn't listen to him anymore. And that's, we started this whole thing about our fathers and our families. And then the other thing I don't say is that my poor dad was Japanese. My rich dad was Chinese. They're two different people.
Yeah. I mean, look at
you know what I'm talking about?
Look at the economy, right? Yeah.
No. It's Chinese.
Are you talking about culture? Yeah.
I'm being a racist right now. It's a broad generalization.
Sure. Yeah.
But every race has its characteristic, and we're not being a racist. I'm just saying
it's culture.
Culture, yeah.
And I understand it because I'm Korean.
Yeah.
So, no, I understand.
And you came from Korea.
And I came from Korea.
You have 2 points of view. The three: Canadian, U.S., and Korean.
Well, I live in Mexico City right now, so I've got
You're ahead of the game.
Couple different ones right now.
You're ahead of the game, and that's the best thing you can do.
Right.
You know, you're doing something I didn't do, so it's good for you.
No,
but to answer the question, what can the person do? You can do what you can do, or you will learn to do.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's different for different people. That's why I'm not politically correct, as you can tell. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I think Trump's kind of a clown too. You know.
Well, I think that's why people like your book. You go straight into the point, and it's refreshing because of everything else that you read in the media is super fluffy, super up in the clouds, and it's
positive.
It's very positive, which is helpful for some people, but it's not really going to help them get it done. And it seems like your book is focused on a very specific type of person that's willing to go through the difficulties of making mistakes, taking that risk, and obviously it's sold 31, probably 50 million copies. Because of the fact that it provides a lot of education, but the people that are actually going to take action are probably going to be a fraction of the people. So really the people listening, that you need to understand if you're the type of person that can apply the things that you've taught them.
If you're listening to this podcast about entrepreneurship, you have a better chance than somebody in their MBA program at McGill, because your mindset's different already.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's mindset to start.
Absolutely.
So if I can tell you one more thing about your race, the Koreans.
Yeah.
The reason we're talking about Taekwondo, and I fought for the U.S. team in the Olympics. Taekwondo.
So that was off air. You can talk to the people about that. You was like a Karate Kid episode, right?
He said, "You're from Korea." I said, "Oh, kamsahamnida," and it's because what does that mean? Hello, right?
It means thank you.
Thank you. I don't even know.
It's the polite way to say thank you too.
Okay.
There's like polite, Japanese like same thing.
So how do you know that? So because I took up Taekwondo. Why did I take Taekwondo? Because I was standing in Vietnam as a 19-year-old kid, and these people called ROC Marines went driving by. ROC says Republic of Korea. And people were dodging, running from these guys. I said, who are those guys? You know what I mean? It's like Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid. Who are those guys? He says, they're ROC Marines. And I said, what's so good about them? He says, they can kill anybody with nothing. And the legend that went ahead, the PR, the public went ahead of the ROC Marines. There are stories of these guys, the Viet Cong would tie them up and they still kill them while they were tied up. And I said, how'd they do that? He said, well, they didn't tie their feet up. I went, what?
Which is Taekwondo, yeah.
Taekwondo is all forms, legs, kicking. So I stuck that on my back of my head. So I went to watch the ROC Marines train when these guys, they have no feelings. They're just tough.
They make great entrepreneurs, though, no?
Yeah. They're nasty. They're not good guys, but they're tough. They just go in. So I came back to the States and I took up Taekwondo, and I still stuck at it. But I took it up. And
you have a black belt, Rob. Come on.
Yeah. Well, American black belt versus. You know what I mean?
I see.
There's a difference between an American black belt in Taekwondo and a Korean black belt in Taekwondo. So I got over there and I fight for America.
Good for you, though. That's amazing that you did that. I got my
butt handed. Well, let me explain to you. I was a heavyweight, which means I was fat in America. In Korea, they're tall and skinny like you.
Yeah.
And Koreans, and Taekwondo is about the legs, really. That's called a chiki or the hammer. They could lift a leg straight over their heads. And they stand there on one leg and they just watch you. So imagine the guy, he looks like this leg in the air, and I'm this little fat guy trying to come up. How do I find an opening?
Yeah.
So
you're like you can barely get up here.
I can't lift my legs. Yeah. So I get into the ring. I said, "This is not fair." But he's a heavyweight. But he's a skinny heavyweight.
Right. But his legs are like.
No. He's tall. He was like 6'4". His legs were probably 8 feet high. And I don't know how high he was up in the air. I couldn't come in on him. So I made the mistake. I said, "Well, no guts, no glory." I jumped in on him. That leg came across my head, and I was out. I didn't have a prayer.
Jesus.
But we're talking about just like Karate Kid. There was one guy who was watching the tournament, this Korean guy. He didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak any Korean. He says, "You got potential." And he took me out into the country. And for 2 weeks, he trained me. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Yeah. And when I came back to the States, I kicked ass. Because I was trained in Korean Taekwondo, not American Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And I was trained by a real fighter, not, the guy was pretty good, but he was not a real fighter.
Sure. It's a different standard when you hang around with certain type of people. I feel the same way. Like when I was 6 or 7, my dad would teach me division and multiplication. And I got to Canada when I was 7 and they were doing subtraction and addition.
Yeah.
It's just a different level.
Yes, it's cultural.
Yes.
And it's the mindset and all that. So it's a lot. So I said this whole thing is, should you be an entrepreneur? Well, a lot has to do with what your family said about it. My poor dad always said the rich were crooks. Entrepreneurs were crooks. The rich were greedy. School, all you had to do was have a college degree, you were set. Different cultures.
Yeah.
And I had to go against all that, especially respecting the father. So writing Rich Dad and Poor Dad, whoo, man. That's why I said he had to die before I wrote that book, because he would have killed me.
Well, listen, Rob, I commend you just because I understand culturally what you had to go through from your father, from your mother. I understand the family background. So to have unlearned a lot of the things that you had to do, particularly at an older age for you, right? It wasn't like me when I was 7, and to see how you've been able to educate hundreds of millions of people at this point is it was really an honor to come talk to you. We leave the audience with one small but actionable step that they can do after they listen to this episode, whether it's a specific book you could recommend, whether it's an action step that they can take to get that one step further to start their business or in their investment, or anything that you think they can really help improve their lifestyle. What do you think that would be?
I just talked to one of my best friends. He's my real estate guy, Ken McElroy. He says he and I are going to stop doing talks at universities.
Wrong.
Why
is that?
Well, it's the wrong audience, wrong message.
Sure.
He says, I just came back, I won't mention it in the university. He says it was horrible. And he's a good guy. He's very smart, and all this. And what he said to the students, he says, your education begins when you leave school. What you learn means nothing.
Uh-oh. That did not go well. At the university, too?
Yeah. He says, most of these school teachers don't know it. He didn't say it that way, but I've said it that way. I took the cash flow game once. This is how we teach accounting fast, is playing games, because accounting is the most boring subject possible. I took it into a school system. We had like 10 tables. We had 5 entrepreneurs at one table and 5 teachers at the other table. Then we had high school kids at each table. The tables where the teachers were, there was no fun. The kids were sleeping. They were bored. They hated it and all this. And the tables where the entrepreneurs were teaching, there was kids were screaming and yelling, having a good time. And the people that hated my cash flow game the most was the economics teacher and the accounting teacher.
Because they were most at risk as well.
They didn't understand it.
Oh, at all?
Not at all. The accounting teacher looked up in a dictionary. She said, well, this is not the definition for an asset in my book. And I said, yeah, and that's why you're a school teacher. Life isn't found in a book. So they haven't invited me back either. That's cool.
Rob, we'll always have you back.
Well,
it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Keep learning, all you guys.
Keep learning, guys.
Time. Yeah.
Awesome, guys. We'll tune in for next week. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming on.
Thank you.
And for giving us a straight shoot interview. Tune in for next time, guys.